About the author. Rama Mehta was born and educated in Nainital. She is the first woman to be appointed to the renowned Indian Foreign Service, but she resigned her position after her marriage. She became a top sociologist, lecturer and novelist. She married into an aristocratic family of the erstwhile Mewar state. There is a significant resemblance between the life of the protagonist, Jita, of the novel Inside the Haveli and Mehta's own. Outline story of Inside the Haveli. Section I. The novel opens with the entry of Jita, the protagonist of the novel, in a new situation. Jita, the protagonist, is a girl born and brought up in Bombay. She had studied in coeducational college and had an exposure to metropolitan life. She comes to Udaipur as the 19-year-old bride of Ajay Singh, a professor of science. The novel begins with a negative stance. At the end of the novel, Jita accepts the life of the Haveli as a willing prisoner, as she finds that the Haveli stood for its typical features: grandeur, pride, dignity and honor. Ajay's ancestors were the ministers of the Ranas of Udaipur, and their Haveli, Jeevani was one of the biggest and the most prestigious Havelis of Udaipur. It is an immense cultural shock for a spontaneous, vivacious and educated girl like Jita to adjust and adapt to the stringent and traditional ways of the Haveli, wherein women kept purdah. The novel presents the story of the protagonist's identity crisis in the cross-cultural content. Brought up in Bombay, Jita, the independent young woman, struggles to maintain her modern identity in a traditional world of the Haveli of Udaipur, where she is married. Therefore, the novel projects a journey to find woman's space in the society and to search one's own authentic identity. Jita tried to speak in a distinctively personal voice, among the collective voice, asserting the autonomy of women. Jita, being outsider, knows nothing about the traditions and values of the Haveli. Her frank, talkative and spontaneous nature would be the main obstacle in adjusting with the old traditional world of Haveli. Her husband Ajay was also an educated man working as a professor of science in Udaipur University. Jita felt suffocated in the Haveli besides all comforts and wealth around her. There was only hope to her that her husband may get job in Delhi, where they could settle and get rid of the Haveli life. The novel is set in Udaipur, once the capital of the state of Mewar. It is famous for its grand history and noble heritage. The city is surrounded with beautiful natural scenes. The gateways, palaces and Havelis are city's typical features. The novel provides the reader's entry into the Haveli of Sangram Singhji. Sangram Singhji was one of the trusted ministers of the king of Mewar. The typical structure of Haveli, having different sections, creates the suitable atmosphere for the novel. The historical courtyard with 3 rooms is at the entry of the Haveli. Further, there are many more rooms. There were separate rooms for women, keeping the aim of purdah system. Women were confined to their rooms only, and no woman was entering in the male section. Males of the family and very close relatives were allowed to enter into women's section or rooms. While entering, male also have to give announcement of their entry. The servants, male as well as female, were comparatively enjoying the freedom. The maid servants can have conversation with their husbands, as there was no intersecting wall among them. Jita felt very awkward in the Haveli, as was taken as outsider in the Haveli. No one was positive about her. Everyone used to say that she needed a training to learn the system of the Haveli and the member in the family. Her husband was the only help for her, but it was also only in night time. The traditional system of the Haveli was not permitting this new couple to live together. Ajay, being educated, also do not agree with this structure, but he was helpless before the elders and the tradition. Jita's maid, Dapu, played very important role, as she was her friend and guide. She taught Jita the manners and etiquettes required in the Haveli. She used to give advice regarding how to shake hand others. She was told to speak a little, and maximum answers can be given with nodding only. Jita was curious to listen what happens outside her room. Jita's father-in-law, Bhagwat Singhji, and mother-in-law, Kanwarni, were very strict. Her mother-in-law used to give orders to all the family. She enjoyed the dignity in the family. Her self-confidence was so much that she spoke very strongly and even moved in the house with special power. She gave regular instructions with high pitch to Jita regarding family matters. Though she was strict, she was full of concern and affection. The incident of fastening the bracelet on Jita's wrist is sentimental one. She plainly announced her as the next to her, meant Jita had to take charge after her. Jita learnt the ways of living in the Haveli day by day. She was introduced with Ajay's relatives, uncles and aunts in the course of time. They used to visit the Haveli frequently. Jita learnt the ways of Haveli within 2 years perfectly. She had forgotten her past and adopted the tradition of the Haveli. Here, Jita compromised with new situation and tradition. She changed herself totally anyhow she could live very amicably with the Haveli life. The manner of respecting the elders was rather artificial one, but it helped to maintain the unity and harmony in the Haveli. Unpleasant words and loud voice was strictly restricted in the Haveli, so everyone used to speak in a low voice. Jita also learnt to control her feelings and words. Very soon, Jita was liked by all. She also respected all her family members. She showed great respect for her mother-in-law, who gave her blessings for happy life. Part 2. Many of women were frequently invited by Jita's mother-in-law to have chatting and refreshment. Many times singing and dancing programs were arranged during the evening time. All her family members, only males, attended those functions with enthusiasm. They exhibit their aristocratic style in taste of dresses. Ajay's grandfather was old enough who used to recall the memories of celebrations in the past. Ajay's birth was celebrated with a grand party. Jita's mother-in-law respected her mother-in-law, Babusa, despite her scolding words many times. Jita's father-in-law, Bhagwat Singhji, was kind and noble man. He managed the matters of Haveli, though the revenues were cut down regularly. He arranged the celebration of Vijay's, Jita and Ajay's daughter, birth with a grand funfair. The death of Babusa was the sad incident in the Haveli. Her death was mourned for near about 13 days by all family. The Haveli was experiencing the dignified silence. No one, including children, was happy and in a merrymaking mood. The relatives and neighboring families joined the mourning and consoled them. Karwarnisa felt very sad over the death of her mother-in-law. She expressed the words of gratitude for her guidance and care taken for last 50 years. The family was extending warm welcome to all visitors and relatives in the past. Babusa was managing all the internal affairs. Now this responsibility falls on Kanwarnisa, who has to manage the duties, rituals and customs of the family. Meantime, one minor episode was introduced in which the author provided a space for servants in the family. The driver, Hiril, tried to develop illicit relationship with the maid servant, Lakshmi. He used to provide her many gifts, saris, edibles etc. to attract her. But she did not respond him positively. Her husband, Gangaram, was very simple man. Once, he found a halwa packet and suspected the nature of Lakshmi. He accused her in harsh words. So, she left the house permanently, leaving her daughter, Sita, in the Haveli. All searched her with no success. Once Kaili, another maid servant, saw her and requested to return the Haveli, but she did not listen her to. Part 3. Jita got accustomed with Haveli life. She had learnt the ways of Haveli. Her mother-in-law got tired and felt weakness. So, Jita started shouldering the responsibility of Haveli besides the duties of her 2 children, Vijayasa and Vikram. Her involvement in the Haveli's routine life experienced the weight of the walls that restrict her the outer world. She was carrying Sita, Lakshmi's daughter, as like her own children. She decided to send her to school. Everybody, Vijayasa, Parai, objected her plan of sending Sita to have education. Considering the suggestion of Dapu, to seek permission from Bhagwat Singhji, she requested him for her education. Her request was sanctioned when she placed it via Parai. Bhagwat permitted Sita's education, uttering, "It is better to be in school than play in the street." Sita was admitted to a school with great objections from many of the relatives of Bhagwat Singhji. Nandu Babusa, Manji Babusa, Kanta objected to Sita's education. But somehow, Jita succeeded in changing the static life of the Haveli. Sita got some friends to play with her. By teaching reading and writing to maid servants, Jita wanted to free them from ignorance and superstition. Sita enjoyed the school very much. Other children admired her, saying, "Little mistress." Jita also started classes for the children from neighborhood families and became very happy to stay and enjoy the Haveli life. Ajay's promotion and cancellation of going to Delhi did not make her nervous to Jita. Jita showed sympathy for the situation of poor people who spend more money on functions such as marriage, engagement, superstitious activities and so on to enjoy the life. The maids of the Haveli joined the shoe, though they made fun of Jita and her proposal of school in the beginning. After some days, women recorded the complaints about girls and their education as it made them more and more disobedient. Nandu and Manji complained that Jita's school had generated many problems. All thought that the school was responsible to lose the dignity of the Haveli. Jita became very strong and declared that she would not endure any action that might dishonor Haveli and her aging in-laws. She firmly announced that she would not leave Udaipur and accept the life of Haveli as willing prisoner. She expresses her gratitude towards her family members who showered the love, kindness and care. Jita's mother-in-law accepted Jita and her proposal of classes and extended strong support for its continuity. Part 4. In the course of time, all members became old. The Haveli also looked old. No celebrations were organized as before. The honor of Haveli was diminishing. Jita and her mother-in-law cared Haveli to preserve its tradition of year-long respect. The new generation knew nothing about the glorious past history of the Haveli. Ajay's promotion and his cancellation of shifting to Delhi were welcomed by Jita with enthusiasm. Though liked or not, Jita accepted all the ways of living of the Haveli except the Purta system. She tried to preserve the dignity of the Haveli. Her classes of learning and sewing encouraged the poor to search for their identity. This social work was making the poor people aware about their rights and freedom. It was her good luck that her in-laws supported all her proposals. Meanwhile, Sita was proposed by an educated boy, Shivaram. Everyone admired Jita's contribution in allowing education to Sita anyhow she could get such a match. Jita knew that the marriage was the only security for women and so every woman must prove themselves to have a suitable life partner. Jita's daughter, Vijay also was proposed by Singh, the son of Daulat Singhji. There was long past enmity in those families. Jita's mother-in-law accepted that proposal only with an object to develop good relations among those two families. Jita objected the proposal because her daughter was only of 13 years old. She objected for child marriage which was not new in Rajasthan. Everyone except Jita accepted that proposal. Jita strongly protested against early marriage. She tried to convince her husband that marrying a girl at an early age is a criminal act. She also blamed that all her family members were also running after money, prestige. Here, her husband, Ajay defended his parents saying they were never after money. All of them give more importance to the integrity and honesty of the family. The marriage came in the way of her learning. She left the school. Jita also accepted her leaving the school as there was no other way to convince them. Jita and her mother-in-law's visit to Daulat Singhji's Haveli took Jita into her past life. She saw Singhji, the proposed husband of Vijay and remembered her marriage with Ajay. As like Ajay, Singhji was also a handsome-looking boy. After observing Singhji, Jita had to change her opinion. His dignified way and nobleness were his plus points that impressed Jita very much. She also had not seen her own prospective husband, Ajay, who was selected by her mother. As like Ajay, Singhji also belonged to good family, which is the important factor in fixing the marriage of a daughter. Part 5. The marriage ceremony of Sita was a grand ritual function as it was supported by the whole Haveli. Lot of functions were performed before the actual marriage. Sarjo, midwife, bathed Sita applying various aromatic herbs and pastes any she could look more and more attractive. Sita's father, Gangaram, was very happy to see the marriage ceremony of his daughter. He also remembered his wife, Lakshmi, who suffered a lot without her own mistake. Sita came across one old woman who gave her a box containing a red saree, a skirt, 2 silver rings, a pair of silver anklets and a box of kumkum powder. Sita cried very much when she was told about that old woman who was no one else but her own mother. On the actual day of marriage, Sita looked rather changed and mature. It indicated the way of Indian life. The bridegroom arrived on a bridal horse wearing very attractive dress. His face was covered with strings of silver threads and flowers tied to his turban. All relatives were given a warm welcome for that function. Everyone was in happy mood. The priest chanted Vedic hymns and Sita and Shivram were asked to exchange the garlands. Dapu and her husband played the temporary roles of Sita's parents. Sita's leaving with Shivram made everyone sad. There were no bounds for their sad expressions. Jita became very sad. Gangaram was happy as he was relieved from his important responsibility. The whole Haveli missed Sita. After a few days, Sita returned to Haveli. She was looking like a happy bird. Everyone asked her about her in-laws. She was happy to share her in-laws' experiences with whole Haveli. It is the typical Indian tradition to see the matching of horoscope of a girl and boy for finalizing their marriage. Though there were many proposals for Varsingji, according to matching the horoscope, Vijay was suitable one. Their horoscope matched perfectly and so the whole Haveli's joy had no bounds. Jita also agreed that he was the suitable husband for her daughter. But her mind was not ready to marry her so early. Jita's father-in-law convinced her that Vijay's education would be continued even after her marriage. He also convinced Jita that the girl had to marry and leave her father's house one day. Bhagwat Singhji talked with Daulat Singhji about Vijay's education after her marriage, for which he also gave the consent. Jita was still unable to decide as her mind was not approving for the child marriage. But finally, she agreed for their marriage. Part 6. Meantime, Bhagwat Singhji felt ill as he got a heart attack. That incident made all Haveli nervous again. Jita and her husband Ajay lost the joy of their daughter's proposal. When Jita observed that her father-in-law's health was deteriorating day by day, she felt worried. She understood that the whole responsibility of Haveli would come to her husband, Ajay, after Bhagwat Singhji's end. She also worried as Ajay had no experience of managing the Haveli matters. If he failed to shoulder the responsibility of the Haveli and preserving its past dignity, glory, pride etc., the whole village would blame him. Jita did not want to happen, so as was ready to struggle for preserving Haveli's dignity at all cost. Bhagwat Singhji was getting weak and weak every day. The hope of his recovery was lost. In his final days, Jita understood his greatness of mind. His instructions to his accountant to pay the debt of Gangaram incurred for Sita's marriage. He played the role of a huge tree under which every one of Haveli got the shelter. Jita observed the falling of that tree, making all helpless. His son, Ajay, was going to be replaced him. All were in doubt whether Ajay could manage all the Haveli matters in the absence of Bhagwat Singhji. Jita understood the true importance of Bhagwat Singhji and so became restless when he was counting his last moments. Jita, her mother-in-law and husband were beside the bed continuously at last stage of her father-in-law. She only knew that the absence of her father-in-law was the great loss which may make total Haveli weak one. All wept continuously over his death. Jita observed the complete change in her mother-in-law after her father-in-law's death. The tradition of the Haveli provided her black saree, no bangles, and no ornaments either in her wrist, neck or ankles. This changed picture of her mother-in-law made her to cling and cry. Jita's mother-in-law tried to console her, saying, "Don't cry, my child. My husband lived honorably, leaving you behind as the mistress of the Haveli. The proof of your love to him would be your keeping the Haveli as trust for your children." Jita's final decision is the turning point in the Haveli. She was very aggressive and protested the customs and traditions of the Haveli. But after the death of her father-in-law made her to change that attitude and struggle for Haveli's traditional sanctity. She decided to accept all the rules and conventions of the Haveli that provided dignity, security and kinship. So became happy to be the willing prisoner of the Haveli. It's the story of the protagonist Jita's identity crisis in the cross-cultural context. Brought up in Bombay, Jita the independent young woman struggles to maintain her modern identity in a traditional world of the Haveli of Udaipur, where she is married off. The aristocratic culture of the Haveli and the setting of Udaipur in Rajasthan evolve the socio-cultural context in the novel. As an amalgamation of tradition and modernity, Jita is definitely a role model for thousands of women who are caught in the complexity of dilemma of traditions and modernity even today.